running their theater program. And 6 years ago, I was on the phone with a friend of mine who lives here in Blue Mountain Lake, and they were telling me that the Art Center here in Blue Mountain was facing potential closure. And so I was doing volunteer work all around the world and realized that this was an area that I cared so much about that I wanted to come and do some meaningful work here. So I took a $70,000 pay cut and moved to the Adirondacks in January from Miami, Florida. And I was 32 years old at the time and took over the Art Center. And some interesting facts that I want to give you is when I first got here, I went down. New York State Council on the Arts is the major funder of many multi-art centers across the state. And in fact, in these rural communities is really the reason they're allowed to exist, able to function. And my first week, I went down to New York City and met with them, and they were very kind, and they sat around the table, and they said, well, we're actually going to pull all your funding in a year. And I was like, what did I do? How am I going to make this work? And so it became this massive challenge of innovation, of how do you take a multi-art center in Blue Mountain Lake with a year-round population of about 100 to 150 people, I think, maybe a little lower now than when I first came, and make it function within the state. So I got some quick numbers. These are estimates, but I did a little research for this week. And there's 3 major art centers in the Adirondacks. There's the View down in Old Forge, the Adirondack Lake Center for the Arts here in Blue Mountain, and then Lake Placid Center for the Arts over in Lake Placid. And these are the ones funded by the New York State Council on the Arts. So if we add up our annual operating budgets, which is potentially all money spent right here in the Adirondacks, we have $2 million in annual operating, just between those 3 art centers. And then if we start to look at all of the small arts organizations that are sort of single discipline, things that are funded through decentralization funding, smaller groups, we come up to about $3.5 million. Then, when we add in sort of libraries, cultural organizations, non-art specific, we get to about $8 million. So this is $8 million in salary, which is the majority of where that money goes. Equipment, supplies, travel, gas, lodging, that's what we're spending our money on in the arts. This number is based on actual sales. But if we look at the potential of cultural tourism and the expenses that go along with that, gas for tourism, hotels for tourism, retail for tourism, this number grows exponentially. And it's in fact a number that I believe people are doing a lot of research on for the Adirondacks, and we'll have some real data. But to get to the Art Center story, I think the reason I'm here is because, unlike most arts organizations, when I came in and realized the state that we were in, I decided that it was time to reinvent the arts model based on the geography and location of where we are. We are not able to, say, drive 35 minutes to come see a show. It doesn't happen, particularly in January and February. And so what we started doing is transforming, and I'll go through some of those solutions in a minute, but within 2 years, the Art Center was actually named the top art center by the New York State Council of the Arts in the state, and we actually did it 2 years in a row. We currently receive the most general operating support funding. We are tied with the Brooklyn Art Center for how much funding we get to support staff and people being here. And that number, just so you know, is about $42,000 a year. Our participation is up over 300%. We've increased earned income. When I first came, the earned income at the Art Center was just under $20,000 a year. We now do over $120,000 a year. And this is from ticket sales and workshops and education in this small little town down the hill. And part of that is because we do year-round service. We're open. We're now open. The building is open March through December, but we do programs all year round. So how do we do this, and what's the problem? So the uniqueness of the situation is that I took a $70,000 pay cut to come to the Adirondacks to do this work. And what I have been faced with is I gave a 3-year promise that I would stay for 3 years. I'm now on year 5. We're starting on year 6 pretty soon. But what we've been working on was first creating a sustainable economic model, creating interest, creating passion for the arts, having arts work as a tool in our communities. But now what we need to figure out is how does it exist when I leave? How does it exist when those of us who are willing to dedicate and donate our salaries, which I give $20,000 a year to the Art Center, just so everyone knows, donate our salaries, how do we sustain beyond that? And that's really the question and the struggle we're working with. Most major arts organizations within the state, I do consulting work all over, are between $30,000 to $50,000 short to have sustainable staff. Now, people talk about sustainability all of the time, and the thing that we don't talk about that we should, and that we don't fund, by the way, but that we should, are people. My experience is that people are the difference between a successful nonprofit organization and an organization that is not meeting its mission. But if you were to look at foundations, the state funding, private donor funds, no one wants to fund people. So this year, I was really fortunate. I managed to get the Northeast Foundation through Barbara Glazer to give a grant to the Art Center for the next 2 years that actually is paying a portion of my salary so that I can stay and work and train local, next generation, young arts leaders to take over and do the work that I'm doing. When I tell this to the New York State Council on the Arts, they basically almost passed out. They can't believe that there's actual succession planning happening in any art center in the state of New York, but particularly in the Adirondacks. Okay? And that's been the real thing. Like, how do we keep the momentum? How do we train the next generation to come in? So in addition to the Northeast grant, we were awarded a $150,000 Red Sea grant last year at the Art Center. It's one of the largest for any arts organization in the state. And that money has been used to hire what we call an artistic associate, someone to learn the work that I do on the artistic community level. And it's been used to hire local apprentices, which are high school students and college students from the area, to come back in the summer, to work in the arts, to learn what we do in order to stay here and do this kind of work going forward. So, solution to this problem that faces the Adirondacks nonprofits. For us, it started with exceptional staff and this idea of succession planning and training, and how do we bring the next generation of people who want to work and live here? How do we get someone with an excellent skill at running a nonprofit, an artistic sense, to move to the Adirondacks for $30,000 a year? It's pretty much impossible, I will tell you, from my last 3 years of trying to find people to work for me. So what we've had to take on the model is a model of mentorship and apprenticeship, so that we're bringing in professionals from across the state, both as performers, as administrators, as marketers, and we're saying, work with us and work with these people and train them to do this after you leave. It's become this unique system we're using. The second thing we had to do was focus on artistic excellence. When I first came, if you were to look at the Art Center's grants, if you were to look at their messaging, it was all about how we're this little thing in the wilderness trying to survive. And in fact, I traveled all around the Adirondacks my first couple of days here, months here. It took a long time. And people would say, oh, you're still there? But more importantly than that, everyone was saying the same thing to me, which is, how do we make it work? There was this sense of depression, this sense of defeatism, that we can't make it function. And everyone, Callie included, would say to me, you're always so optimistic. But it became this thing of, we can't just say we need money because we're here and we deserve to be here. We need money because we do a great artistic work. And so the emphasis has really shifted. This Red Sea grant that we got funded our Summer Theater Festival, which actually serves Central New York and the Adirondacks. It brings equity actors throughout the Adirondacks for our 5th year of touring free Shakespeare throughout the park. One of the shows was just named the best show of the year by the Post-Standard in Syracuse. It's about doing work that is of high quality, not just doing work for the sake of doing work. And that has become one of our transformative principles. Community is our next one. We're here year-round. The other issue you guys talk about, I love hearing, we're going to create jobs, we're going to get families to come here. Families need quality of life. It's really that simple. I'm looking around the room because I see some of the folks that are here in March and April, and the level of sort of defeatism and depression and wanting to move out, particularly among our young people. People ages 20 to 25 don't exist in Central Adirondacks. It's hard to find them. You would need a microscope. They're not here. So how do we create a place where they want to live, a community with which they can engage in that's exciting? So we put a focus on community in that sense, but we also do it in the sense of being an economic driver. So all of our shows partner with either pubs, hotels, other nonprofits, the Wild Center, the museum, Wildlife Conservation Society, you name it, things you would never think the arts were going to be involved with. We are working with them to make art a way of them sharing their message and increasing the quality of life for the people that they work with. So community has been key. The next is innovation. As I mentioned before, no one is going to drive from Saranac Lake, even if I put on the best show possible in Blue Mountain Lake. You're not going to do it. There's natural divisions. So Jim and Sheila Hutt, when they started the Art Center, they did this drawing of a helicopter that was the Art Center. And in fact, without the helicopter, we have done this mission, which is we've said, our building is just a shell. It is not what we are. It's just where we operate. And in fact, our programs toured to over 2,000 square miles of the Adirondacks. We had shows in 26 Adirondack communities this year. We tour to different movie theaters, to different community centers, to different schools. Anywhere you think that a show can happen, we will put one on. We were in Clifton Fine a couple weeks ago doing Shrek for kids and charging nothing to get those communities to come check it out. We did a show in Tupper Lake that was actually sold out. Over 300 people came to see the show. And part of that was because we're taking the work to them and building support and infrastructure in that way. I'm almost done, I promise. Number 5 is, all right, you're looking at your phone. I was like, I'm in trouble. Number 5 is diversity. So people often say to me, we live in the Adirondacks. It is 98% Caucasian. What is diversity? What is diversity to you? So what we've done is we've started new programs. We have a program that we do every single spring that very few people know about that are not here in the spring, which is we work with Sunmount, which is the state organization for taking care of adults with disabilities, and we partner with the Long Lake Central School, and they bring in about 15 clients, and we use about 30 of the students, and they work together to put on a show. And then we actually go into the Sunmount facility in Tupper Lake and put on a show with the clients who are unable to leave. Actually, today we are teaching an art class there. So we started to see that there's a diversity of population here beyond race, yeah? And then there's also the diversity of retired professionals, veterans, you name it. But our other mission is, it's our job to bring in new ideas. And so there's people in this room that are smiling because there are things that the Art Center has produced, ideas that I think many of them imagined I would never be able to do without considerable backlash. We started to push the envelope. Every summer when we bring in actors of all different ethnicities. And they come and they live here and they share in the experience. And it's such a small thing compared to your prison story, but what excited me about what you were saying is my mission is to bring people from the cities here to experience the Adirondacks in a new way that makes them love the Adirondacks and come back. And that's where we come from on the diversity side. So, there's 2 things that I think art does. It's a tool to rejuvenate and build communities and connect people. And then finally, and most importantly to this conversation, is that cultural tourism is needed in the Adirondacks to supplement the ecotourism. If you can get people, we talk about this at the museum all the time, if we can get people to the museum for a day, what makes them stay in Blue Mountain, Indian Lake, Long Lake area for another day? What do they do that night? If we can get people to come for the summer, what is it that they're engaging in besides going fishing and canoeing and hiking, which is all fun things, but we require more if we're going to attract more people to this area. So that was me being really brief with everything we do. But if you have any questions, please let me know.